Hello students, myself Professor S.G. Hiremat from Department of Civil Engineering, KLS VDIT, Halia. Students, in the last online class, we have discussed about the process flowchart, sources, characteristics, as well as the treatment methods of different industrial effluents from textile and cotton industries, as well as the cane sugar industry, distilleries, etc. Today, in this online class, we will discuss again about the process flowchart, sources, characteristics, as well as treatment methods of industrial wastewaters from dairy industry, steel industry, as well as cement industry. So, come to the first topic, that is the process flowchart, sources, characteristics, as well as treatment methods of dairy industrial wastewater. Dairies are centers where raw milk is processed either for immediate consumption or converted into dairy products such as whey, cheese, butter, dried milk, powder, and ice cream. These manufactured products may be supplied to other industries such as bakeries and candy manufacture for use as raw material in their own products. Dairies handling milk are classified as receiving, bottling, condensing, dairy milk powder manufacturing, ice cream manufacturing, cheese making, and butter making. Wastewater generated in a dairy contains highly putrescible organic constituents. These necessitate prompt and adequate treatment of the wastewater before its disposal to the environment. Almost all the organic constituents of dairy waste are easily biodegradable. Hence, the wastewater is amenable to biological treatment, either aerobic or anaerobic, or a combination of the two. Now come to the various operations in a dairy. First operation is receiving. Raw milk is received from the fields. It is weighed and tested for its fat contents. It is stored in refrigerated containers before further processing. Second process or operation I can say is pasteurizing. This process consists of heating milk to 63 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes and immediately refrigerating. It kills all microorganisms, including the pathogenic organisms, which may have entered the milk through diseased animals. Third operation, that is bottling. The pasteurized milk is filled in bottles or polythene sachets for distribution to the consumers. Bottling is invariably preceded by clarification and filtration. Next operation is condensing. Pasteurized milk is heated and evaporated under vacuum. The concentrated milk is pumped through a closely set valve that breaks deep fat globules. Sugar is added to the milk and the sweetened milk is filled in tin containers, packed and sent to the consumers. Next operation is dry milk manufacture. Whole milk is preheated and centrifuged to separate the cream from non-fat portion of the milk. The cream is pasteurized and used as ice cream mix. The non-fat portion of the milk is further heated and evaporated under vacuum to a controlled percentage of solids. The concentrated non-fat milk is then spray dried. Next operation is cheese making. Pasteurized milk is sold by adding a lactic acid, producing bacterial culture. The mixture is allowed to ripen under controlled temperature. The curd is then cut with knives and the excess whey is allowed to drain. Further, removal of whey is done by pressing the curd, and the pressed blocks are stored under controlled temperature and humidity for the development of flavor and further ripening. It is then packaged and stored at low temperature. Next operation I can say is butter making. Cream to be made into butter is pasteurized and is ripened with bacterial culture, churning at low granules from the butter fat in the cream. Buttermilk is then drained from the churn. Butter is washed, standardized for moisture and salt content, and is worked further till it agglomerates into one mass. It is then packaged for distribution. Next operation is casein making. Sourced or spoiled milk is treated with mineral acid to produce casein. The casein is then precipitate. Casein is used in the manufacture of plastic, paints, resins, and varnishes. Students, this is a general flow sheet followed in a dairy, which is as shown below here. So as I said, all the operations you can see here, raw milk in cans and tankers, receiving station will be there, cooling, pasteurization. So in between creamery, cream, skim milk. So just you can go through this particular flow chart to understand the various operations in a dairy industry. Just you can go through this particular flow chart in the notes uploaded in WhatsApp group of your class. Now, let me check how many of you have joined the class. Ashwini Patil.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Chaitra Mudugal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it audible, ma?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Okay, okay. Let me continue. So now let us discuss about the sources of wastewater. Waste producing operations are washing of bottles, cases, cans, tanks, cooling equipment, processing equipment, and cleaning the floors. Dripping, leaks, spillages, and overflows due to improper equipment or inefficient operation. Third one I can say is discharge from evaporators. Fourth one is wasted buttermilk and whey. Whey is the liquid left when milk forms curds. And last source is spoiled raw or treated products. So these are the sources of wastewater. Now, depending on the generation of wastewater, we can classify the dairy wastewater into different types here. So basically we have got two types. First one is spent waters. So which is nothing but water used for condensing and free from milk solids. These are easily disposed of. Second category is wastewater produced during handling and manufacturing of dairy products. And again, these can be classified into two types. First among them is spoiled products of skim milk, whey, and buttermilk. Second one is drips, leaks, pursurances, and alkaline wash water. Whey and buttermilk have high concentration of BOD. Now, let us discuss about the characteristics of wastewater generated in a dairy industry. The wastewater are wholly organic with high oxygen demand. So, as we can say, why, because milk is a balanced food for bacteria, therefore, it is consumed at a faster rate, depleting the oxygen. So it is estimated that 1 kg of whole milk produces about 10 kg of BOD. So that is equal to 300 to 3000 mg per liter. And BOD by COD very high. So that is around 0.68. That means the BOD is greater than COD, indicating degradability of the waste here. So as we have discussed about the definition of BOD and COD here, I think you have remembered BOD is nothing but the oxygen required for the oxidation of complex organic matters. But If you consider COD, COD is nothing but the oxygen required for the oxidation of complex organic as well as inorganic compounds present in the water or wastewater here. So here the ratio is less than 1, showing that the BOD concentration is more than COD. COD. Yes, correct. BOD is greater. No, no, no. COD is greater than BOD, thus showing indicating the degradability of the waste. Now, heavy black sludge and strong butyric acid odors because of decomposition of resin are common. Also, these waste contains nitrogen and phosphorus, which are excellent nutrient for algae and other aquatic plants, which on death add to the taste and odor of the waste water. So such a odorous situation you can see near KMF of Dharwad. So you can see a odor, a bad odor, I can say, a bad odor near the areas like Shutter Colony, Gandhinagar, etc. at Dharwad. That is due to KMF situated in that particular area. Now, if you come to the composition, so that means the characteristics, different characteristics. If you consider pH, the pH of wastewater from dairy industries, it is around 7.2. So COD they have not recorded. So it is less than, it is more than the BOD here. I can say if the BOD is 1240, the COD is more than this 1240. Now, if you consider the alkalinity of dairy industrial wastewater is around 600 mg per liter as calcium carbonate. So, dissolved solids 1060 mg per liter. If you can consider chloride contents, so that is 105 mg per liter. Nitrogen, it is around 80 mg per liter. Phosphates, 10 mg per liter. And organic grease, it is around 290 mg per liter. And if you consider suspended solids, 760 mg per liter. So I don't know, in the literature it is given like this, but the actual method is to give the range, because there will be variation of these characteristics depending on the process, quality of the milk, etc., etc. here. But anyhow, in literature they have given like this, so that's why I am presenting the table before you. Yes, Madhu, Madhu Gurikar.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it audible, ma?
Ah, sir, audible.
Yeah, Jai Shri, Jai Shri Ramat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it audible? Hello, is it audible? Sachin, Sachin Timapur. Ashwini,
Yes, sir.
yeah, is it audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me continue. Okay, now come to the treatment of wastewater generated in a dairy industry. As evident from the high BOD by COD ratio, the dairy waste can be treated efficiently by biological processes. So, reduction of volume and strength of the waste by first one is prevention of spills, leakages, and dropping of milk from cans. So, such a arrangement you can see in developed countries here. So they have got modern method of collection as well as without a dropping a leakage or with avoiding the leakages from the cans. So second one I can say by reducing the amount of water for washes. So this is also done, or this leads in the reduction of the quantity of waste water generated in a dairy. And Third one I can say is by segregating the uncontaminated cooling water and recycling the same. So this particular operation you can see in KMF Dharwad. So separate channel has been provided to draw cooling water as well as, and it is not allowed to mix with the contaminated water. So due to the intermittent nature of the waste discharge, it is desirable to provide equalization tank with or without aeration before the same is sent for biological treatment. So this equalization, just you can go through the meaning of equalization in that particular notes which is uploaded in WhatsApp group. Even I asked question over this in first I. A provision of grease trap is also necessary as a pre-treatment to remove fat and other greasy substances from the waste here. So you can say is this particular process is nothing but skimming process, I can say. Skimming means that is a process to remove oil and greasy or grease of the wastewater. An aeration for a day not only prevents the formation of lactic acid but also reduces the BOD by about 50% here. So aeration is nothing but the artificial supply of oxygen to the water. So that means the water may be retained in lagoons or some aeration method may be provided like sprinkling or stepped aeration. Like this, you can see such an arrangement of treatment in KMF Dharwad as well as in KMF of Belgaum. Both high-rate trickling filters and activated sludge plants can be employed very effectively for a complete treatment of the dairy waste. On the other hand, the low-cost treatment methods like oxidation ditch, aerated lagoons, waste stabilization ponds, etc. can be employed with simpler type of equipments and less maintenance. So this is a flow chart, you can say, which shows the treatment of dairy wastewater. So waste equalization, so that means here there will be, this is a process of equalizing the wastewater here. So equalization in a sense, if you take any amount of water, then the characteristics should be constant. And second step, aeration, that is nothing but the supply of oxygen to the wastewater. Grease trap, this is nothing but skimming. And biological treatment, so you can go for the biological treatments like ASP or TF. ASP in a sense, activated sludge process, and TF means trickling filter. After this, you can subject the wastewater to one of the low cost treatment, so that may be oxidation ditch or lagoons, etc. So finally, the treated effluent. So this can be discharged directly into the natural water, or sometimes this effluent can be used for other purposes like gardening, or also sometimes the wastewater can be used for growing crops, growing crops. Okay, so this is the notes prepared with reference to these references here. So that is first one is industrial wastewater treatment by A.D. Patwardhan. So you can see the detailed flow chart. Detailed flow chart. I have taken the flow chart from this particular book. So that is industrial wastewater treatment by A.D. Patwardhan. And also I have referred the lecture notes on industrial wastewater treatment by Srinivas Angadi, who is assistant professor in the Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundigal, Hyderabad. So students, these topics are very important in sanitary engineering as well as if you work in municipal services and also while working as the consulting environmental engineer. Okay. Yes, students, any doubts? Any doubts in the process flow chart as well as the characteristics, treatment methods, and sources of wastewater? Yes, Sachin Timapur. Madhu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is there any doubt, Ma, regarding the process flow chart as well as the characteristics, sources, treatment methods of dairy wastewater?
No, sir.
Yeah, okay. Let me continue with the next topic. So that is uh, so dairy wastewater we have discussed. Now let me discuss about the process flow chart, sources, characteristics of steel industrial wastewater, treatment methods, as well as reuse and recovery, as well as disposal of wastewater generated in steel industry. So let me introduce the topic. That is, integrated steel plants usually consist of five mains. That is, coal washery, coke oven, blast furnace, steel melting shop, and rolling mills. In addition to the above, the plants may have auxiliary units like oxygen plant and power plant for their own uses. Now, if you come to the coal washery and its wastewater, the coal needs some processing to make it suitable for use in coke ovens. The main objective of such treatment is the removal of solid foreign matter present in the coal. Generally, the process in a coal washery include crushing, screening, and wet washing of coal. In the wet process, the coal is separated from the impurities using the principle of differential settling. So this you can say that is nothing but submerging of crushed coal into the water. Then the lower or the heavier part will settle at the bottom and the lighter part, that is the dust, dirt, etc., floating, will be in floating position. So water used for washing is recycled and reused after sedimentation process. But in spite of all care taken to ensure maximum reuse, appreciable quantity of waste wash water containing coal fines and other impurities like clay and small amounts of other minerals like calcite, gypsum, pyrite, etc., comes out as waste, normally in a thickened form as the underflow of the sedimentation tank. So this following flow sheet shows the detailed manufacturing process of steel from hematite or magnetite ore here. This is a manufacturing process of steel from iron ore. So such a arrangement you can see in Hospate, that is one of the industry, steel industry is there, that is Jindal Steel Works. Jindal Steel Works, which is situated near Hospate. So you can see all these processes in that particular industry. So first of all, coal will be there and dolomite, scrap pig iron. So like this, you can just go through this particular flow chart to understand the different processes involved in the manufacturing process of steel from iron ore. So iron ore you can say is that is we can use hematite or magnetite. Usually in Karnataka the hematite is available. So Bellary is famous for this hematite steel or iron ore here, which contains around 65 to 70% of iron. Now, if you come to the next process which leads in the generation of wastewater is that is coke ovens. The production of coke involves the carbonization of bituminous coal by heating in the absence of air at a temperature range of 900 to 1100 degrees centigrade in an oven, which drives off all volatile portions in the coal. The gas which is revolved containing the volatile matters in a collected through standpipes and is cooled in stages. In the first stage, the gas is cooled to about 80 degrees centigrade by spraying cold liquor over the gas, thereby producing mainly tar as condensate. In the second stage, by a further cooling to about 30 degrees centigrade, condensate containing additional tar and ammonia liquor is produced. These two condensate liquors, after separation of tar, is a tar decanter, are recycled as sprays in the first stage. The excess liquor, known as ammonia liquor, containing mainly ammonia and various other compounds, is subjected to distillation for the recovery of ammonia. The waste is sent for further treatment or other chemical recovery. After the second stage of cooling, that is third stage, the gas is compressed and cooled for further recovery of chemicals. Beside the arrangement for separation of tar and ammonia, this stage may include a benzol washers for recovery of light oils. The remaining gas may be used sold as fuel. The coal, after being carbonized, is removed from the oven and quenched by cold water. About 30% of the quenching of water is evaporated, while the remaining water containing coke fines comes out as waste. This wastewater is usually recirculated through breeze settling ponds and does not present any pollution problems. The largest single source of wastewater from coke oven plant, having the highest pollution potential in an integrated steel plant, is the ammonia still from where the waste ammonical liquor comes out. The second source of wastewater is the benzol plant. The pollution potential and the volume of waste from which are much smaller compared to the first. So these are the characteristics of coal washeries. So if you consider the total solids, the range is around 1000 to 25,000 mg per liter. If you consider suspended solids, that is around 800 to 24,700 mg per liter. And if you consider dissolved solids, 200 to 300 mg per liter. So these are the ranges given. So because there will be processing of a natural ore with the water here. So that may be due washing of the coal, etc., etc. Now, if you consider the, as I told you, ammonical liquor, that is also wastewater generated in a integrated steel plant. So these are the parameters. If you just, you can go through this particular table to understand the ranges of different characteristics of typical spent ammonical liquor. If you consider benzol plant waste, then these are the characteristics. Now, how to treat the coke oven waste here? So all the pollutants of the spent ammonical liquor affect the ecology of the waste receiving water course. The phenol is considered to be the most objectionable pollutant. The other objectionable substances include thiocyanate, thiosulfate, cyanides, etc. In some plants, spent ammonical liquor is utilized for quenching of hot coke. This practice destroys the toxic matters like phenols in the liquor, but as this causes heavy corrosion in the quenching cars and in other quenching equipments, the method is not generally favored. Phenol, being a valuable chemical byproduct, may be recovered instead of destroying it. Several techniques have been developed for recovery of phenol by liquid extraction method. Most of these processes use benzene as solvent to extract phenol from the crude ammonical liquor before it enters the ammonia still for ammonia stripping. Other solvents used include light oil, petroleum oil, etc. The extracted phenols from all absorption processes can be recovered by washing with sodium hydroxide solution. The phenol reacts with caustic solution to produce sodium phenolate. The crude phenol is then liberated from it using gases containing carbon dioxide. Certain microorganisms, both bacteria and yeast, are identified which can oxidize biologically phenols, thiocyanates, thiosulfates, and ammonia. When optimum pH and temperature are maintained, sufficient nutrients are added, and the reactor is suitably seeded, the proper loading of this phenolic substrata to the reactor may result in the desirable reduction of the pollution load of the waste. Phenol in concentration as high as 800 mg per liter may be treated biologically. In all practical cases, the phenol concentration in the waste ammoniacal liquors too high to be treated directly by biological means. So these are either pre-treated by physical or chemical methods or are diluted using other ways to reduce the concentration of phenols. When coal washeries waste is available, it has been shown that considerable reduction in the strength of ammoniacal liquor can be accomplished when equal volumes of coal washeries waste and ammoniacal liquor is mixed and fluctuated with lime in a clarifluculator. Effluent of the clarifluculator may then be sent for activated sludge process. The biological treatment of the coke oven effluents can be carried out economically in a three-stage process with isolated or cultured bacteria appropriate in each stage. In the first stage, the phenol is oxidized. In the second stage, the thiosulfate and thiocyanate are reduced. And in the third stage, the ammonia is oxidized. So if you come to the treatment of coal washery waste, the major pollutant of the coal washery is the suspended solids. As such, this waste is usually treated in a clarifier with or without coagulation. However, the addition of coagulant reduces both detention time and surface area of the tank. Several coagulants like lime, starch, and indigenous coagulants like nirmali seed extract can be used effectively for the clarification of coal washery waste. The clarified effluent is either recycled or discharged as waste. So again, I have referred these references for the for making the above notes. Just if you want, you can go through these notes or books or any other information related to steel industry. So as I told you, the topics are very important if you want to work as a consulting engineer for consulting environmental engineer. And now let me discuss about the third today's third topic, that is cement industry. Yes, Ashwini, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any doubt, ma? Any doubt related to steel plant wastewater?
No, sir.
Yeah. So let me discuss about the third topic, that is the process flow chart as well as the characteristics as well as treatment method of wastewater which is generated in cement industry. So before that, let me take a break of 2 minutes. I'll be back within 2 minutes. Okay, Jayashree.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me take 2 minutes break, ma. I'll be back. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, don't leave the meeting. Yes, welcome back, students. Yes, Hema.
Yes, sir.
Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My voice is clear now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me continue with the third topic, that is the process flow chart as well as the characteristics of wastewater generated in cement industry, as well as also we'll discuss about the treatment method of cement industry. Students, these notes are very important because you won't get any literature related to cement industry in regular books like A.D. Patwardhan or any other book. So that's why I have prepared this particular notes after referring various websites in the net. Okay, the cement manufacturing industry is classified by the Department of Commerce as SIC Group 3241, that is hydraulic cement. The products produced by the industry are various types of Portland cement manufactured to meet different requirements. Cement is manufactured by a continuous process, normally interrupted only to realign the kilns. There are three major steps in the production process, that is grinding and blending of raw materials, clinker production, and finish grind. These steps are illustrated in the following figure number 4. The ordinary ingredients for the production of cement include lime, that is calcium oxide, silica, alumina, and iron. Lime, which constitutes the largest single ingredient, is most commonly obtained from limestone, cement rock, oyster, shell marl, or chalk, all of the which are principally calcium carbonate. Materials such as sand, clay, shale, iron ore, and blast furnace slag are added to obtain the proper proportion of the other ingredients. At some plants, it is necessary to beneficiate the raw materials before they can be used. For example, if the most economical supply of clay contains too much sand, the mixture can be separated by washing with water. Two types of processes are used in the manufacture of cement, so that is wet and dry. At wet plants, the raw materials are ground with water and fed to the kiln in a slurry. At dry plants, the raw materials are dried before grinding and are ground and fed to the kiln in a dry state. The moisture content of the raw materials available at a given location frequently determines which process a plant will use. For example, if clay and marl with a high water content are available, the wet process may prove more economical. So this is the process flow chart or the manufacturing of cement from the raw materials mentioned above here. Raw materials, crushing will be done. If if you are using wet process, so these are the various processes like proportioning and mixing, grinding, homogenizing and blending, and kiln, finally kiln dust, again clinker cooler, finish, grinding and gypsum addition, cement cooler, storage, bagging, shipping. So these are the various processes of wet process. Similarly, dry process will be there, proportioning and mixing of raw materials, grinding, homogenizing and blending, kiln. Again, from kiln, there will be a clinker storage, finishing. After that, all those processes will be same as in that process. So just you can go through this particular flow chart. After the raw materials has been, let me discuss about the manufacturing process of cement from the raw material. After the raw materials has been finely ground, it is placed in storage containers, silos for dry process and slurry tanks for wet process. The material is analyzed and the composition is adjusted as necessary to obtain the correct formulation for the type of cement being produced. The ground raw materials are fed to a kiln consisting of a large rotating metal tubes, usually 3.7 meter or more in diameter and 75 to 150-meter long, lined with refractory brick on the inside. The kiln is inclined slightly so that the contents are transported forward as the kiln rotates. The raw materials are fed into the elevated end and the kiln is heated by a flame at the lower end. An array of heavy steel chains near the entrance is used sometimes and serves to transfer heat from the gas stream to the raw materials. The fuel for the kiln may be coal, gas, or oil. Most cement plants are equipped to burn more than one type of fuel, and the fuel used at any particular time is dictated by availability and cost. When available, natural gas is usually the least expensive fuel, but in order to obtain gas at the most favorable price, the manufacturers must agree to curtail its use when supplies are limited and must therefore use coal or oil as a standby fuel. I think you have heard the word kiln that we have discussed in detail in previous semester while discussing the topics related to air pollution and its control. The amount of fuel used to manufacture cement varies with efficiency of the kiln, the composition of raw materials, the process used, and many other operational factors. In 1963, on the average, the production of 1 metric ton of cement required about 246 kgs of coal or 187 cubic meter of natural gas, which is equivalent to approximately 1.5 million kg calorie. So this is the power consumption. Just to go through the notes and let me discuss. These are all the production, the various processes of production of cement from raw material, that is from silicates and aluminates. And and now let us discuss about the sources and management of wastewater. As described in these notes, there are two basic processes for the manufacture of Portland cement. The wet process, in which the raw materials are slurries with water before being fed to the kiln, and the dry process, in which the raw materials are ground and fed to the kiln without use of water. A review of the characteristics of the wastewater and inspection of both types of processes indicate that the type of process need not have a direct effect on the quality of the wastewater. The average loadings for wet process plants and slightly greater due to the high loadings of the leaching plants, almost all of which are wet, but the average is still relatively low. Moreover, a significant number of plants in both groups report very low loadings. The two different processes offer basically different options for water management and reuse. However, acceptable options are available for both types of processes. Any difference that may exist in the cost of implementing these options is likely to vary as much among plants of the same type of process as among plants of different types of process. Therefore, wet and dry process plants may be included in either subcategory. Now, specific water uses and wastewater characteristics. Water usage for the cement industry is summarized in the flow diagram in figure 7 below here. These uses and the characteristics of the associated discharges are discussed below. Cooling water, the major use of water at most cement plants is for cooling. This water is used to cool the bearings on the kiln and grinding equipment, air compressor, burner pipes, and the cooling of cement prior to the storage of or shipment. While cooling water is most con- contact, it can become contaminated to some extent through poor water management practices. This contamination may include oil and grease, suspended solids, and even some dissolved solids. If cooling water towers are used, blowdown discharges may contain residual algicides. So these are the various processes which leads in the generation of wastewater here. So this particular flow chart shows the water usage in cement manufacturing. Just you can go through the notes. So if you come to the characteristics, so I have listed here various parameters, and also I have given the units used to express these characteristics as well as mean value of leaching subcategory. It is a mean value. Okay. So other sources I can say, other sources of wastewater in cement industry is water from surface runoff after rain may also laden with the dust that accumulates on the plant site, runoff from dust piles, coal piles, and raw material piles may also become contaminated. Plants with boilers, cooling towers, and intake water treatment facilities have blowdown and backwash discharges associated with these operations. At some plants, raw materials are washed, and at others, the raw materials are enriched by beneficiation process. These processes may result in wastewater discharges containing suspended solids. Where an active or abandoned quarry is used as a receiving basin for dust disposal or plant wastewater, the discharge from the quarry may be contaminated with waste associated with cement manufacture. However, where a quarry is used exclusively for the production of raw material, discharge of any accumulated water is not considered in this report but is intended to be considered in a subsequent EPA, that is Environmental Policy Act effluent guidelines study of the mineral mining industry. So this is the explanation regarding the uh, sources of waste water generated in cement industry, and also I have discussed about the quantity. And now come to the control and treatment technology for wastewater treatment or wastewater. There are relatively few operations in cement manufacturing where the addition of pollutants to the water used is inherently associated with the use of that water. For most of the plants in the industry, pollution results from practices that allow materials to come in contact with the water. Pollutant levels at these plants can be greatly reduced or eliminated by suitable in-plant control measures that prevents waste from entering water, or by more extensive reuse and recycling of water that may become contaminated. For the plants in leaching subcategory, wastes are necessarily introduced into the water and recycling is not feasible. Thus, for these plants, treatment is required to reduce the pollutant loading. Only a limited improvement can be expected from the application of available control technology. The main control and treatment methods for the cement industry involve recycle and reuse of wastewater. The devices employed include cooling towers or ponds, settling ponds, contaminant ponds, and containment ponds and clarifiers. Cooling towers or ponds are used to reduce the temperature of water used to cool process equipment. Settling ponds are used primarily to reduce the concentration of suspended solids. Containment ponds are used to dispose of waste kiln dust. Clarifiers are mainly used to separate solids in dust leaching operation. With the exception of plants in dust contact subcategory, both wet process and dry process plants can achieve virtually complete reuse of wastewater with existing state of the art technology. So this is about, again I have written something about the treatment of wastewater. And if you come to the in-plant control measures are primarily limited to the control of streams for plants within the leaching subcategory. Control consists of segregation of the leaching streams from the discharge streams and conservation of water to minimize the water requiring treatment. Students, you can, I have referred this particular website which is listed here for writing the above notes. Okay, so as I told you, this topic is very important if you want to work as a consulting environmental engineer. Okay, students. Yes, is there any doubt related to the topics which you have covered today? Yes, Chaitra, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, the syllabus itself is heavy for module number 5 here. Okay, so I'll tell you what to read and what not to read, not to prepare for the examination. Okay, Hema,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Let me conclude. Let me conclude the class. In the next class, again, we'll discuss about the process flow chart, characteristics, treatment methods of other industries. Okay, thank you, one and all.